Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I am Matthew Hardman, the G-Shock Watcher, and on today's episode, we're going to be looking at the financial results that just came out from Casio. It was published on the 1st of August, so a bit more of a numbers conversation, a bit more of a business conversation on this one, but it is interesting to see where Casio and where G-Shock is actually headed, what's happening with their timepieces business, and how that might impact you when you purchase your G-Shock watches. Today, I'm wearing the G-Shock black and yellow, the Rangeman black and yellow, just a super comfy watch, really nice one, love wearing it, easy to go, easy to run around in. So, with that, let's go take a look. So, as I said, these results were published on August 1st, 2025, so it's the fiscal year ending March 31st, so it's the Q1, so if you just don't know, Q1, 3 months worth of business, and this is where Japan actually publishes the results, the business, how things are actually trending. There is a video playback of the actual announcement of the actual results itself. The video itself has a few more details in it, which you might not get from the actual report itself, which I'll try and put into the report as I run through it. Now, we're going to spend our time focusing mostly on the timepieces business, which is really made up mostly by G-Shock. We won't focus on things like the sound division and the consumer division, really what is happening on the watches, which I assume that's why you're here. That's why we're going to go and actually talk about it. So looking at the results, if we go down here, and we're going to skip over the whole company. This is where we want to start, the actual consolidated results by the actual businesses. Now, I have an issue with these numbers straight away, not the fact that the numbers are largely flat or sort of declining a little bit, but the way that Casio sort of presents them looks a little bit better than it actually kind of is. They talk about this bit at the end, which is percentage increase or decrease, which looks like it's an increase, but it's actually not. They're not actually doing too well here. So if we look at it from 2025, which was last year, net sales was 40.9 billion yen. And then this year in March 2026 is 39.5 billion yen. So they do show an amount of a increase or decrease here, which was minus 1.3 billion yen. And then they say it's percentage increase or decrease. And it says 96.7%, which isn't a negative, it's actually a positive, but that's not what it should be. What this is a negative growth year on year. So I went ahead and actually did my own numbers on this one using Excel. So 40.9 billion last year, 39.5 billion this year, a change of 1.4, so close enough to their number. This was a year-on-year growth of minus 3.4%, which means they declined year on year, which is obvious, but sometimes when you look at the numbers and they're bigger and they're very numbery, you want to be able to actually see what the actual decline looks like. Now, historically, as we go through this, Q1 is never really a strong quarter for Casio anyway. In fact, if we go down here later on into the appendices, we can actually see historically how the numbers actually look. And so what you can sort of see here, this is the timepieces business. Q1 is at 38.4, then Q2 goes up, Q3 goes up, then Q4 sort of comes down. Same thing for last year. Q1 was lower, Q2 went up, Q3 came down, Q4 kind of went up, and then Q1 comes down again. And so it might be a situation that it's typically seasonal. Q1 is that sort of lower number, whereas the other quarters actually start to pick back up. But it is important to sort of see what's happening in the business from that point of view. It's not good enough to look at the quarters and just sort of say, well, this is normal, this is what's going to happen. You want to see what Casio is actually doing to help drive that business forward. So after looking at the results, it's interesting then to go ahead and look at the markets themselves. And so here's how they actually break down the timepieces business. And what you can see, pretty much the major regions they look at, Japan, North America, Europe, all sit around 17%. So that's sort of I guess you'd almost sort of say the Western world. If we look at the other side of the world, which is the non-Western world or non-developed markets, which is a bit insincere. I mean, some of the markets we're going to talk about here are very, very well developed. They're just segmented differently. So we have Indian and ASEAN, we've got other, we've got China. China's at about 7%. I think China's been declining every single year in terms of the actual sales they've been getting. India and ASEAN's about 16%, which means that the rest of that is around about 27%. So again, I did some of the numbers on my own on this one here. Japan was 17% for a population of 123 million. North America has about 617 million, and that's 16% of their sales. Europe has 70% of sales, and that's 744 million there. But we start getting into the big boys here. China, which is 7% of Casio sales, actually has a population of 1.4 billion people. And if you take India and ASEAN, which is 16% of their sales, that's 2 billion people. And in everything else, 27% other is 3.2 billion people. So if you think about that for a second, what's kind of interesting is those three other markets, so China, India, ASEAN, and other, all of those combined on the representation from Casio, that's 50% of their sales. Now, if 17% is Japan, 16% is North America, 70% Europe, perhaps there's an opportunity for them to increase the actual marketing that they're doing in some of those other markets. Surely, when you look at something like in India, ASEAN, China, some of those markets might be maybe cheaper to get into from that point of view, from a marketing aspect. Social media is very, very strong there. People and brand ambassadors might be a little bit easy to get a hold of. It seems like there's an opportunity for them to shift some of their marketing from those other markets into these growth areas. And when we think about some of the other markets here, take out India and ASEAN for a second, you still have LATAM, you still have Africa, you still have Middle East. Those are very, very highly populous nations. And certainly you would think there would be an interesting opportunity to do some really interesting collaborations over there. Like there's some incredible cultural aspects of life in markets like that. I mean, just take LATAM, for example. I mean, Carnival G-Shock watches, football G-Shock watches. You know, there's many, many different things you could go ahead and actually do there. There'd be some amazing things you could do in Africa, for example, to really bring out different cultures. We've seen a little bit of that with India, with some collaboration watches, but why not amp up some of the collaboration watches in Africa? I think that's probably a missed opportunity. Collaboration watches for South America, that's also a missed opportunity. And of course, ramping up India and ASEAN would be also really cool as well. So, you know, going after those markets on the left-hand side of that pie chart could be an opportunity for them to be able to increase their sales. Certainly, some of the big competition they actually have, such as, you know, Apple watches, Pixel watches, all those different things. Those are very, very expensive watches. Maybe Casio can do things which are unique with the G-Shock range at the entry level to bring some really unique watches to those particular regions. So it's an opportunity for them to jump in from that point of view. Now, looking back at the different regions themselves, Japan declined, Europe declined, China declined. We saw growth in North America and other. So North America is obviously the interesting one because of tariffs. They're saying there was a surge in last minute purchases because people were getting ready for new tariffs being implemented from that point of view. I'm sure that was probably a big impact, certainly as we start to sort of see more of those tariffs being realized for many markets, and production of G-Shock watches happens in many different markets. It doesn't just happen in Japan. You've also got Thailand, and I think the report talks about another one later on, but it is a watch which is manufactured in many locations around the world, and tariffs will go ahead and actually play into that. So people might have been jumping in early to purchase their watches before the tariffs kicked in. If we look at Europe, for example, G-Shock and Casio watches, not really growing too much there. China, just really struggling at the moment. Their economy's not doing so well. It's kind of funny being in China. You go to China and things are always alive and happening, and it's a really vibrant place. And you sort of hear about the economy not doing so well. It doesn't really match up to the experience that you have over there. So it's a shame to see that China is so challenged with the economy right now, and that's impacting G-Shock. And then the others, You can see it get called out there. ASEAN. Sales are strong in Malaysia and the Philippines. And those are two markets which are potentially very, very big. Big populations, lots of different people over there. Different people. But big populations, they could do more for some of those different markets. Maybe less focus on certain markets. Like you'd still want to market into Indonesia. That's a massive population. But Philippines has a huge population. Malaysia has a huge population. Even Thailand. But they've also called out that Thailand and Indonesia did have particular challenges as well. Now, what we do see here, though, is we see that there were strong sales in Latin America and Brazil. So, as I sort of said, I think LATAM is an area which potentially G-Shock should look, or Casio G-Shock should look at trying to get into to help accelerate some of the sales of their business as well. So, overall, as they sort of say here, based on their local currencies, they had a 3% growth year on year from that point of view. So largely flat business, but there's more that could actually happen. I still believe that ASEAN, India, LATAM, those markets do have opportunities for G-Shock to do more in that space. Now, getting down into specific products, this is where we start to see what units are actually going ahead and actually selling. And so G-Shock's broken it up this time into metal and MRG watches, resin watches, sports watches, and others. And we're going to talk a little bit about the strategy. The strategy they talk about later on has remained fairly consistent. There was this sort of distinct separation of premium watches, metal watches, then there was resin, and then they were talking about Casio. And so what we're seeing here is they start to have the conversation about the business as they're keeping those structural groups together from that point of view. So in the G-Shock metal, there was a big focus on some of the watches like the GMW B5000D. They kind of like that one. That was popular here in Asia. There was the MRG watch, which was very strong in Japan, obviously for, I would say, historical or emotional reasons. But this was the watch that was actually mentioned in the video, the GM2100D, which was the most popular watch around the world. This sort of full metal octagonal watch, so the Casio type looking watch, this was the one which was most popular. Now, just getting into that particular watch, if we go through here, this is the 2100 series here. So you kind of have a Tiffany blue, a dark blue, a green, an orange, and a white watch. Metal band. It's not tough sole, it's a battery band, a battery watch, but it's a nice watch all the same. If we jump into it and have a look here, you know, what we can actually see is a nice looking watch. It's a nice blue, it's got a positive display, all metal, quite a nice watch from that point of view. And initially, when I sort of looked at them talking about this particular watch, I thought it was the one with the resin band, which was this particular watch here. This is a GBM 2100. And it got me thinking, when you look at these particular watches and look at the GM 2100s side by side, they do look kind of similar from that point of view. You've got the light blues, you've got the greens. There is some similarity here. But what I was thinking was back to the video we talked last time about the introduction of new colors in the GBM 2100s, which we saw on G Central. These ones here was like a lighter blue, a purple, and a white with that sort of textured face. I would imagine that as they start to introduce some more of these new colors into the GBM 2100 series, I wouldn't be surprised for us to see those colors actually coming into the GM 2100 as well. And particularly if this particular part of their business is doing so well, we may see some more full metal and with more variety of colors from that point of view as well. From a resin point of view, if we go across here, we've got the GA2100, the GA2100BM, which was a clear one, but this one stands out, the GAV01, which I don't know how many times I've seen this watch and I've kind of said, should I buy it? And I've just been, it's not really me. But I've had many conversations with people about this particular watch. Some people like it, some people love it. It is interesting with the magnetic hands. So if they get impacted, the hands will sort of break off and then remagnetize back into their spot. But this watch seems to be taking a little bit of the limelight. As I sort of say here, Sales of the GAV01, sorry, let me switch over. The sales of the GAV01, which features a new construction design, got off to a strong start in China, Japan, Europe, and the United States. Now, I've done plenty of talking about results in my time. When we sort of say strong start in China, Japan, Europe, and the United States, it might have had some good initial sales, but that might have dropped off very, very quickly as well. And I think what we might have seen with this particular watch is the fact that this watch might have been really quite a shocking and departure from G-Shock design, that you've got some of those diehard people who might have gone ahead and jumped in and it showed initial sales were quite interesting, but that might have sort of filtered off over time. So we'll have to see if they keep coming back with this particular watch. And just as a refresher, this watch was around about Singapore price about $200 from that point of view. It's fairly straightforward sort of watch. Very, very disorientating watch, I think, at the same time. So let me put up here. Here it was the GAV01. Very, very different watch. Very, very unique from that point of view. So yeah, interesting to see how that one actually pans out. And now going back to the other one here, the G-Shock series, the sales of the GBD 200, which is this watch down here, the G Squad one, that was strong. But then also this GBA 950, which is a relatively newer watch, that actually went pretty well from what they were indicating. It had a good sort of adoption from an urban point of view. Now, as I looked at this particular watch, if we go down and have a closer look, and we go down and look at that sort of styling, cool kind of watch. It's a combination of analog and digital. It has the negative display, which not really super happy about. Not say happy, it's not really my choice of watch itself. But as I was looking at this, and I was looking at another couple of watches in the Casio space, this is where we start to see, I guess, some of the cross-pollination of ideas. This particular watch, as I look at it, it does actually remind me of a ProTrek watch. And so you've got that same sort of octagon-ish shape of the watch itself. And I've seen that sort of go through some of their other designs. So let's have a look at this one here. If we look at this particular watch, it does look a little bit similar to this one here. Maybe not, maybe it does. It kind of has that same sort of octagon-ish shape. It's not necessarily the same octagon shape you get from a GA 2100. It's a little bit thicker. And that's what I sort of see between these watches. So this GBA 950 looks like it's taking design cues from the ProTrek watch as well, which is always a good thing to see. It's great to actually see the different brands actually helping each other out and doing some different things with design. So I'm pretty excited about that. I still am keen to pick up a ProTrek at one point. I mean, I did experiment with the Edifice and wasn't too happy. I need to have a look at those a little bit more, but I'd like to try a ProTrek. But that influence from a urban sports point of view is what they're talking about. Urban fitness, what did they say? Urban sports concept grew worldwide, so that could be an option for them as well. And then the last one they talked about was the Casio watches. That is still strong for them. I think what we're seeing here is essentially a burst of nostalgia as people go ahead and actually grab some of those different watches as well. So interesting to see the different watches come through. Then if we come down over here, what's interesting here is the note about a revision of the forecast of the actual business. And this is where we see the impact of tariffs in the actual market itself. And so while their net sales is still remaining consistent, if you look at the published figures for May, they sort of said 132 and 138. That stays consistent. But what they're seeing here is that operating profit is going down. So in H1 in May, it was 11 billion. And then 13 billion, we're now seeing 9 and 12. So a revision of 2 billion in the H1 plan and 12 billion, so another 1 billion in the second half of the year. And so as we sort of say, here's the production, right? Japan, 5% of watches, Thailand, 50%, and China, 45%. So some of those tariffs, and I'm not a financial expert, not a business expert, I just find it curious to look at, but I'm assuming that the tariffs, where that product's actually manufactured, will actually have an impact. And so if 50% of those watches come from Thailand and Thailand has a certain tariff, that might impact their profitability. China, same sort of thing. Japan at 5%. So there is an impact there in terms of profitability. So I'm not sure if that means Casio is going to take on the brunt of that with their sales. I'm sure they're probably going to go ahead and actually increase their prices a little bit to handle the tariff situation, but they are revising down their profitability in the business from that point of view because of the actual tariffs from that angle. So a bit of an impact there. And if we go down here, all right, this is the bit where I wanted to quickly touch on the strategies by watches. So this has not changed since the last sort of report as well, which is kind of good. If I go over here to, this was the report back in, I have to go back up a bit. Their reports have gotten a lot smaller since then. March 31st, 2025. So the last report. The last report, they talked about this strategy where what they were going to do was break up, as I talked about, the premium line, the metal line, and the entry line. And, the idea here was the premium line, what they wanted to do here was to increase the unit prices of models to a higher price range and have a interesting product development, I guess. So adding new features into that. So in the video call itself, they talked a little bit about increasing prices of the metal watches. So that's your MRGs, your MTGs, your metal lines, looking at increasing the prices of those particular watches. And then the other side of that was these sorts of entry-level watches, the more iconic models of those. What you're going to see them do here is to combine these in advertising campaigns to help them reduce advertising costs. So instead of seeing these models coming out one by one, they're going to start to aggregate those different models or those designs together and do them in one advertising motion. So the idea is to use all four in one motion to be able to go ahead and actually get a larger impact, I guess, from that point of view. So that's what they're doing from a strategy point of view, and they're kind of consistent, right? So if we look at the strategy now, that hasn't changed. In fact, it feels like this is a cut and paste of the actual previous report. I can sort of look at that from a font and clarity point of view. It does look like what they had before. But what they've done here is they've said, yes, we have continued to strengthen product development. Yes, we've expanded Casio Watch success story in Europe. And yes, we've accelerated consolidation of models into iconic styles with strengths. So it was more this time around to be a check mark in terms of have they been sticking to the strategy, which I guess they have. We start to see more innovation happening in the metal lines. There's that line here, which I think resonates with what we talked about last week, this expand sales of lineup for G-Shock Slim models. Now, if you remember, and I'm going to quickly pull up G Central here, there was the talk of a new G Steel, this one here, which would potentially look like a full metal, but maybe emulating some of the Casio watch styles as well. So if we go back over here, it kind of feels like that might be a thin G Steel watch. And that could be one of those watches which is actually coming in. So do we have dimensions here? Height, width, depth, 11.6 is the depth of that particular watch. So this is where we might start to see the manifestation of these more G-Shock Slim models coming in as well. So interesting to see how that really comes about. Like, we're going to start to see more of that coming through. So metal lines going up in price a little bit. Premium lines will probably go up in price. Entry lines will come together. In fact, if I were to go and have a look at their current advertising, and I've seen this come up a few times already, we see some of those watches coming out in groups together. So G-Shock Metal. Now, of course, I can't find it, but there was I did see an advertising campaign where a lot of those iconic watches actually came together in one space. So yeah, look, I mean, we want them to innovate in watches, make them cooler, make them more interesting. There's obviously an aspect of style we want to see them actually bring into those watches as well, so that would be cool to see them make that happen. last couple of areas here, obviously the marketing strategies, which is interesting. So we've got brand ambassadors. So we have XG as the global brand ambassador. XG is a group from Korea, as many of the big bands actually are. And then in Europe, we've got a pan-European brand ambassador, which is Central G. So XG is the global ambassador. Central G is the pan-European ambassador. India and ASEAN still has their brand ambassadors as well. And to be honest, my pop culture isn't fantastic. XG is a 7-member hip-hop R&B girl group. XG stands for Extraordinary Girls. So I imagine the Extraordinary Girls is a great thing from a marketing to maybe a feminine audience from that point of view. I haven't actually heard much of their music. Let me just see here. What have we got? If I go ahead and give this a go, let's just try this out. Yeah, not necessarily my style of music from that point of view. Might be my daughter's one. What about this guy, Central G for the Pan-European? He is a British rapper from Shepherd's Bush, London. What's Central G got here? Let's give him a go. Okay, interesting. Reminds me of another one I heard once before when I was growing up, which was a British rapper. He was kind of interesting from that point of view. But those are the ambassadors they're going to be focusing on in terms of their business moving forward from that angle. So, you know what? If it works out for them, that's great. I hope it gives more brand recognition to G-Shock to be able to go ahead and actually move their businesses forward. Then finally, I thought this was interesting here. The new business domains, the Mouflon is still there. It's not a watch. It looks like a hamster. But what was interesting to me was the other areas. And during the video, they talked about investing in some of the new business areas that they saw to create new business domains. And they brought out the finger-sized ring watches and the sauna watch. Now, I don't know if these are necessarily big enough experiences to create entirely new business demands. I mean, maybe ring watches, but that would be interesting to get into that sort of market. But I don't think that would really fly. I think it's got a unique novelty, as does the sauna watch, but I don't think you'd want to go ahead and actually divert too much of your business into going after those as new business domains and focusing a lot of effort there from that angle. So it is an area that they will focus on from that point of view. Maybe Mouflon's going to be the future. We hope so as well. But that's it, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, I just wanted to go through. I did think it was going to be a short video, but as I start talking, we're nearly at 30 minutes from that point of view. But nothing massively earth-shattering when we look at the financial results for G-Shock or for Casio this time around. I think what we're seeing is a consistency in their approach to watch development. We'll obviously have to look at what happens over the next 3 to 6 months. Do we start to see some more of those thinner G-Shock watches coming in to be able to take on some of the Casio brand or the Casio styling? Like I sort of said, some of that Pro Trek is actually coming into G-Shock as well, which is interesting. And are we going to see big price increases into the middle band, the G-Shock Steel or G-Shock Metal series and above? Do we see major price increases on those ones as well? But yeah, flat business. We want to see G-Shock actually do better. So hopefully new innovations will actually drag up the business from that point of view. With that, ladies and gentlemen, thanks so much for hearing me out. Like I say, not a super big businesses timepieces expert, but it is interesting to read those reports. If you like the video, please like and subscribe, thumbs up, all those things are really great. Your comments keep me going. Thank you so much for sharing them with me and tell me about some of the watches you're actually purchasing as well. With that, thank you so much. Have a great day.